October 3rd, inside the Sports Lodge. Joey Chapman, John Lodge, back with you. And John, today's just a good day. Today I woke
It,
up with a smile on my face because the season has arrived. NHL regular season games kick off tonight. A full schedule, a full slate, none bigger than the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens, which I know both of us will be watching, and the John Tavares watches on in Toronto. But figured today was a good day as any to do our season preview. Actually, I guess we're probably a little late on it, but we'll get it out there for you. So we're going to do our division picks, we're going to get our wild card picks in there, and we're also going to give you our major award winners. We're not going to go through it all. We're not going to spend too much time harping on some of the minor things, but it's going to be an exciting season. And sitting down to prep to do this, John, I just get really pumped up looking at these matchups, looking at these teams, what some of the additions have been. And let's jump right into it. We're going to start out west. Give me your top three picks for the Pacific Division. Who's going to make the playoffs out there west?
all right, so I want to start this off by reminding everybody who made the playoffs last year.
Oh, that's a good call.
And in the Pacific, it was Vegas, Anaheim, and San Jose and Los Angeles. Now, obviously, there's a wild card in there.
I believe Los
this
Angeles
year, I
was
think,
the wild card team.
Yeah, I believe LA was the wild card team. They had 98 points, right? So I think there's going to be a little bit of a change here, though. Not in the fact, or not in the who's making it out of the Pacific Division. I've got San Jose taking the division. I've got Vegas coming in behind them. I don't think they're going to have that much of a hangover from going to the Cup final in their first year. And I've actually got LA stepping up with the addition of Ilya Kovalchuk. I think he's going to add that scoring that they were missing last year and get that third spot in the division.
I think the first two in this division are pretty easy for everybody, right? San Jose adding Carlson, Evander Kane a full year, Jumbo Joe's back and beardless, looking like a young man.
That was so weird.
She's looking like a young man now, Johnny Lodge. It's really good to see. I think San Jose is obviously going to run away with this. I love Martin Jones and net too. Vegas to me only got better, adding Max Pacioretty and adding Paul Stastny into the middle of the ice. I think they're just going to be absolute killers. Where we disagree in this division, though, John, is I have Calgary as the third team in here. I really like the additions of they bring in Neal, they bring in Peters over from Carolina. I think he's a really good coach. They also bring home Lindholm and Noah Hannafin over from Carolina in that deal for Dougie Hamilton, and I really like Noah Hannafin. I think he's an upgrade. The guy was the third overall pick couple of years ago. Before whatever, Mitch Marner was fourth. Noah Hannafin was third.
I think Hannafin was fifth and Marner was fourth.
Oh,
because we took Marner over Hannafin and everyone got mad.
All right, that was. Why do I not know that? Anyways, so that's what I think. I think they're going to really step up this year. I like the additions. I think Calgary sneaks in with that third spot over LA, Johnny.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in on that LA thing, on the Calgary thing. The only problem I have with Calgary is their goaltending. Mike Smith has the tendency to get hurt a lot, and they don't really have a guy to step in and be that dude. So if Mike Smith can stay healthy, I'm with you, but it's going to really depend on their netminder.
Yeah, I like Gillies there. I think he's the backup, but you never know, right? It's tough to do, especially out west, John. As we get into this, there's just so many killers. And moving on to the Central, we're going to get our wild card picks out after, but we wanted to do the top three in the division first. And so give me I'll go first this time with the Central, Johnny. This to me, actually, do me a favor. You tell the folks who made the playoffs last year out of the Central.
So in the Central Division, we had Nashville walking away with the President's Trophy, Winnipeg and Minnesota, and then Colorado coming away with the second wild card spot in the Central. So Nashville, Winnipeg, Minnesota coming to the top three spots in the Central last year.
And you know what, John? I think it's going to be pretty similar. This year I have Winnipeg and Nashville flipping. I think Winnipeg's the team to beat this year. I think they're going to come away with first place in the Central. I have Nashville, obviously, making the playoffs again. But my third pick is St. Louis. I have St. Louis finishing third in the division this year. I really like what St. Louis did. They got deeper up front, adding Bozak, adding O'Reilly. I know there's a couple injuries, and you're never quite sure about the back end or the goaltenders and the back end depth behind Alex Pietrangelo and Jay Bouwmeester, and I really like Colton Parayko. So I think St. Louis has gotten a lot better. I think they're going to be able to grind it out in this tough division. And I think St. Louis this year is going to be the team that really digs in and finds a way to get that third and final spot. Unfortunately, it means they're probably going to go up against either Winnipeg or Nashville in the first round. But I think it's going to be St. Louis' year to get back into the playoffs. What do you think for the top three, buddy?
Pardon me. I didn't differ too far from you. I think it's 1A, 1B between Nashville and Winnipeg. I think it's going to be a dogfight again, right down to the end. I'm going to give it to the reigning Vezina Trophy champion, Pekka Rinne. I think he's going to be able to lift the Predators up enough. I'm not saying that Winnipeg isn't a good team. Like I said, it's going to be a dogfight. So whoever comes out, I think they're going to win by 1, 2, maybe 3-point stops in the division. Both these teams are going to fight out like they did all last year coming into the playoffs. My third pick is going to shock you, and I've got Dallas coming out as the third team in the Pacific or in the Central. Sorry, just simply because, and it's not that they've added a lot in the offseason, but I just think that this team's ready to get it going, ready to really push it into overdrive. And I think if Ben Bishop can have a really good season, then this team can easily get that third spot in the Central Division.
So much talent on that Dallas team, right? Like, obviously starting at the top with Ben and Sagan and Radulov, but I like their back end too. As much as Ben Bishop was hurt last year, when he's healthy, he's really good too. Klingberg. They can list some guys off. It doesn't surprise me that much. I really like Dallas. I think they're a good squad, John, and I think things need to break right for the Stars because I just don't know about their forward depth beyond their top guys, and I don't like Jim Montgomery's a new guy coming in as the head coach, so we'll see how that goes. But it certainly wouldn't shock me at all if the Dallas Stars made the playoffs. So last year, the two wildcard teams you said were Colorado and Las Vegas. Or Los Angeles.
Colorado and Los Angeles.
Sorry, Los Angeles. So a team from each division making the playoffs and the wild cards. Give me your two picks this year, John. Who are going to be the wild card teams? Who sneak in here to the Western Conference playoffs? And who's going to be the Cinderella for the 2019 season?
I've got Edmonton and St. Louis in my Western Conference wildcard slots. I think, like you said about St. Louis, they added enough to bolster their offense, but it's not like they added like super high-powered guys. They just added really sturdy, stable dudes who can really drive a game and play defensively responsible hockey. So I think that, I think St. Louis has enough to get in there. And then I gotta say this Edmonton team's got to bounce back, Joey. I mean, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Cam Talbot can have a good season. I know that he's kind of like a glorified backup, and he's not really that number one. And this is my opinion. He's not really that number one dude that these really contending teams have. But when you boast the guys that you're putting on the ice every night, you can't be in the bottom of your division.
Well, I think they obviously have the most talent, right? Or the most talented player, but we've obviously seen the most talented player doesn't get you in all the time because my two wildcard teams, Johnny, is I have Colorado and Anaheim getting in. And I can make a good case for both of them, and I will. And we'll get into who's going to miss after, but I just wanted to lay out why I think Colorado and Anaheim are going to get in. Colorado got in last year. I don't think they got any worse. I think they got better. I think this young core is really, really good in Colorado, excuse me. And I don't think Nate McKinnon's going to get worse. I don't think Tyson Barrie's going to get worse. I think if Semyon Varlamov can stay healthy and they can keep it together in goal, that back end's going to figure it out a little bit. And I think some of those pieces that they got in the O'Reilly deal from Buffalo are finally starting to work out. And then the things they got back for Matt Duchene and being involved with the Kyle Turris and all the things that Colorado's done, I think they're going to find a way to really get back into the playoffs because I just think they're that talented, and I really like what Gabe Landeskog and company are going to be able to do. Anaheim, I don't know if this is a weird pick or if people are just sleeping on Anaheim because I know Ryan Getzlaf isn't the same guy, and Ryan Kessler isn't the same guy he used to be, and Corey Perry's basically done for the year. But that back end is just so solid. They have so many pieces on that back end with Cam Fowler starting at the top of it, and then Josh Manson, and just these defensive prospects that you keep hearing about in Anaheim. They're all there. They're all ready to go. And I think they're going to be able to shut teams down. And The thing is with Anaheim, John, they've done it before, right? They know what it takes to get into the playoffs, and I think they're going to find a way to squeak into one of those wild card spots. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be a dogfight, but I think Anaheim has enough to get in.
I think if Anaheim gets in, they've got to trade one of those premier defensemen for a forward, especially losing someone like Corey Perry and like you said, the likes of Kessler and Getzlaf not really being what they used to be. If they want to continue along this path of competence, we're not even going to call it dominance or even having really a chance to win the cup, in my opinion. But just being a competent team that can make the playoffs, they're going to have to get rid of some of that back end to complement their forwards, or they just decide to rebuild this thing and strip it down and get a lot of picks, prospects, and young guys for those really good defensemen and ship them off to teams that are ready to win now.
Yeah, but those young defensemen are young. Like that's
I know,
what you want to build around. Like I think
not everyone. Just like like I just wonder because like they really don't have a lot on the forward core. So
yeah, their forward depth is going to be the problem if they can score goals. But I don't think it's rebuild time for Anaheim. I think Randy Carlyle is definitely not a rebuild coach. I think
no.
they're at the end of a window here, John, and I think Anaheim's definitely just trying to do what Washington's done, what San Jose's done, is trying to retool and find a way to get back to the Cup final or get to a Cup final because Anaheim's a good team, right? Like, and if Kessler and Getzlaf are healthy and ready to go in the playoffs, that's as good as a 1-2 matchup as you're gonna see. Those guys are pains in the asses, and Ryan Kessler's a dirty piece of shit, but he's an effective piece of shit. That guy will piss everybody off. Like, Connor McDavid hates him, Ryan Johansson hates him. Like, all these centermen in the Western Conference, the last guy they want to see lining up in the playoffs every shift for 4, 5, 6, 7 games is Ryan Kessler. Because he's a piece of shit, Ryan Kessler, and he's going to piss you off. And I think they're going to find a way to get in it, and they can make some noise. So for me, that I have Dallas, Edmonton, and LA all missing, which means heads can roll. You talked about it in Edmonton, Johnny. I just don't like their defense. Like
Yeah.
I just don't like their back end, and I'm higher on Cam Talbot than you are. I think Cam Talbot he has to prove it, obviously, but he had the one good year. Last year was a bad year, but you're not defined by 2 seasons, right? He's had 2 opportunities, and he did really well one year and not so well the last year. But nobody on Edmonton did well last year. Besides Connor McDavid, it was just a complete gong show.
Unless this guy turns into Devin Dubnyk, though, there's no way he's turning into a star goaltender.
Well, but he did it. Like, his numbers that year, they made the playoffs and got to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals against Anaheim. Like, that was a good team, John.
Yeah, everything
And
went
he
well
was
for them,
playing
though.
well. Like, and the defense core wasn't much different. It wasn't much better. So, like, Cam Talbot was really, really good for them. And I think he has the ability to be better. And he has to be better if Edmonton wants to get in, because I think with that defensive core, he's going to need to stand on his fucking head and be a Vezina nominee if Edmonton's going to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just, yeah, I can't really disagree with what you have to say there because the defense is like Swiss cheese in Edmonton. So I would like to see more Canadian teams in the playoffs, and it
Me too.
is so frustrating to watch such a talented team like Edmonton miss year after year after year after year.
So you have Calgary missing as well?
Yeah, I have Calgary missing simply based on the fact that I think Mike Smith is getting injured.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
And I just don't
It's tough to
think
argue.
that they have what it's going to take in the backup department in order to recover from a Mike Smith injury. So that's the only reason. Not because they're not good forward, not good defensively, just because I think that they're weaker in between the pipes.
Yeah, and then obviously there's teams that we didn't even mention that had no chance, and
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
Carolina. Oh, sorry, that's
no,
the East.
yeah, no, like Vancouver's not getting in. Like we didn't even, like, and we spent most of the time talking about those wild card matchups because I think we're in lockstep in things like Vegas and San Jose and Nashville and Winnipeg. It's these not so much the top tier that's we have to argue with. It's that second, like who's gonna push through tier. And I
Yes,
think
that
there,
fringe tier.
yeah, there's a lot of teams right there. Like we didn't mention Chicago because they're not making the playoffs this year. They're not deep enough. Corey Crawford's where the hell is he? And
Is he ever going to play
I
again?
don't know, Matt. Like, and then that back end is not good behind Keith. We're behind Keith because Seabrook's not that great anymore either, and Keith didn't look great last year by himself. And Minnesota, as good as they were a playoff team last year, but I don't think they're getting in this year. So yeah, there's gonna be it's gonna be tough, man. Like I don't have Dallas getting into the playoffs. I know you do. So there's lots of turnover. There's gonna be lots of battles. And John, on the eve of the season, I think it's going to be just as competitive at the very last day of the year as we're making it seem like it's going to be. I think it's going to be tight races across the board, but you never know, right?
Yeah,
Injuries.
I can't believe you didn't have Arizona making the playoffs.
Well, if you listen to Biz Nasty, he's saying Arizona's going to be a fucking rope this year, but I don't see it from Arizona. I do think Arizona's going to have a good year. I think they're going to surprise some people, but
Hopefully better than the last few, yeah.
I certainly don't think. Let's put it this way: I think you're going to see Arizona beat up on the Edmonton Oilers a little bit this year.
Ooh.
All right. Moving on to the Eastern Conference, Johnny, because let's move out east. I think we got that was a pretty solid Western Conference preview, in my opinion. That was some the Sports Lodge hard hitting podcasting, right there. All right, let's do the Metro. Last year, hit me with who made the playoffs last year, Mr. Lodge.
Oh, this shouldn't shock anybody. Last year to the Metro, it was the reigning, defending Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Philadelphia Flyers. But both wildcard teams came out of the Metro last year for the East, with Columbus and New Jersey snatching them up.
Yeah, okay. That's basically what I remember. Who do you have this year, my friend?
So for the Metro, not much of a change for me. I got Caps, Pens, Flyers taking the division. Almost, it's actually it's the exact replica of what happened last year, and I think the Flyers got better, but not better than the Penguins and the Caps, but better than Columbus and New Jersey. So I think they stay in that third spot. And yeah, the Penguins and the Capitals, they're just so good all the time, right? You can't really ever take those guys into the 1-2 spot until they prove to you that they deserve to be taken out of it.
Well, I'm going to right now because I think my Metro is a little different than yours, Mr. Lodge. I have Columbus, Pittsburgh, Washington as my top three, and I'll tell you why. Columbus has something to play for. Columbus, like, they haven't won anything. Winnipeg, Washington, and Pittsburgh, they don't care if they win the division. That's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned about getting to the playoffs and being healthy. You have Sergei Bobrovsky on a contract here. You have Arturi Panarin on a contract here. You have a lot of things going up in the air for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, despite the Seth Jones injury, are still a really good team and really deep. And I think Torts is a pain in the ass, and he coaches a real good system. And I really do believe that Columbus is just going to work their butts off all year, and they're just going to be fighting for everything. They're going to be trying to prove people wrong, and they're going to come away with the Metro. But Washington and Pittsburgh get in. Like, that's not even a question, just based on the depth and how, like, they're just so experienced, right? Like, you said it, you can't take them out until they're out. Like, you can't take them out of the playoffs. You certainly can't imagine two of the best teams over the last decade in the NHL not being in the playoffs. These two teams just don't miss. I know Washington didn't really get worse. Pittsburgh didn't get worse. They just kind of stayed the same because that's what they're doing here. It's like there was talk in Washington, would they change? But they got Carlson signed. They figured it out. They got all their money worked out. Obviously, the bottom ends are changing all the time there, but that's what happens when you're cap teams and competing teams. But I think Columbus this is going to be their year, John. I just think they're fighting for things. But obviously, you don't like that take.
Well, I was going to say, I understand where you're coming from, because this is why Washington won the Stanley Cup last year, why everyone's saying they had not an easy time, but mentally an easier time winning the Stanley Cup, is because nobody believed in them. Last year, or the year before last, everyone was like, oh, it's Washington's year. And then they failed like every other year. But then this past season, everyone was like, they're going to do it again. They're just going to fail. No one cared about the Capitals, and there was no pressure. So I can see where you're coming from with Columbus. from the media, there's going to be no pressure for Columbus to really do anything. But from the inside, they're really going to want to win. But here's my question to you, Joey. If Columbus goes 3-7 or 4-9 to start the season, do you see Bobrovsky and Panarin shipped out of town for a rebuild because these guys are saying they don't want to re-sign?
They would have to be catastrophic, right? Like I think it would have to be bad. Or I think the only way that it's so tough. I really feel bad for Columbus in this situation because they didn't do anything wrong here. They acquired these two guys both in trades, and neither of them want to stay despite being a really good team. And I'm sure Columbus is a fine place to live. Like there's better places to live, obviously, but I just don't know because I think a team could take a real big swing and try and acquire both of these guys from Columbus, right? Like I think you can package a couple first rounders and take a big run. I can think of a couple teams that could use a really good a Vezina caliber goaltender
Edmonton?
and a top 10, 15 scorer, right?
Yeah,
Edmonton, Calgary,
Calgary for sure.
Vancouver. How about Florida out east? You could make a claim that Boston wouldn't mind upgrading on Tuukka
Oh, they
Rask,
definitely wouldn't.
right? Like, I can go all day here. There's some teams and these guys, that's the problem. When you're talking about guys like Bobrovsky and Panarin, John, everybody's going to be in on them. Bobrovsky's going to want 10 million, but people are going to make room for these guys because they're so talented and they can win you games and they've proven it. And that's just, so we'll see how it goes. It's really, what I think would happen, John, I think they're going to go through the year here. I think this is going to be a deadline thing. I don't think they're going to rush anything, especially with Seth Jones being hurt. I think they're going to want to see how this team is by Christmas. Maybe if by Christmas, if they're out of it, you really start hearing the rumors. But I think they're going to go all in on this year and see if they can win. And because winning is going to be their best opportunity, right? If they go out and are a 110-point team, and you tell Bobrovsky, look, I'll give you your 10-5, and Panarin will give you your 8.5, 9, whatever you want. And we're a good team. Maybe you get these guys to stay. But I think the only way Columbus is going to be able to re-sign both is if they're good.
Yeah, well, that's it. They're going to have to be like really winning, right? They're going to have to be tops in their division. They're going to have to be leading the division, really, like you said, in order to resign these guys.
And I think that's what they're I think that's what they're going to try and do. Moving on to the Atlantic, Johnny. This is a fun one, just because it's fun. I am going to start. I don't know why I keep forgetting, but I always want to go to you because I do like knowing who made the playoffs last year out of the division.
So it's Tampa, Boston, Toronto in that order, with the futility behind Toronto. Nobody in the Atlantic Division behind Toronto making the playoffs.
Not one wild card team.
So and I mean, like, I'm just going to continue going on here.
Go.
Mine really the only thing that's flipped for me. Well, I guess a lot has flipped. I'm looking at Toronto taking the division, Tampa finishing second, and Boston finishing third. Now, there's a little home cooking in there, obviously. I'm a Leafs fan. I think that they're going to do well, and I know that Tampa Bay is ranked the number one team in power rankings across almost every sports outlet, but I got to believe in this young squad in Toronto and the addition of John Tavares and, Freddie Anderson. He's coming in leaner. He's coming in meaner. Let's just hope that they can have a great season, take that division crown, and take that momentum into the playoffs.
Yeah, Johnny, I have Tampa Bay here winning the division just because I like their back end better, really. They're deeper on the back end and as good as the Maple Leafs are, and I think it's a wash basically everywhere else in goal and up front. As much as I like the Tampa Bay forwards, I still would take the Maple Leafs forwards, but I don't think it's really close on the back end. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay. I do think Toronto overtakes Boston for second. I think they're going to finally get home ice in the first round, which will be nice for them. I think that's going to be the difference when we get to playoff time. I just think they're better than the Bruins on paper. I think they're better than them on the ice. I think they're finally deep enough and they have the experience to get through the Bruins. I definitely foresee a third Bruins-Leafs first-round matchup for the third time in the last whatever it's been. But that's what I predict happening, just because. So that gives me. I'll give you my wild card teams because I think we're pretty lockstep on the division, right? I have Philadelphia and Florida getting in out east here. like you said, Philly didn't get worse, and they were a playoff team last year, adding JVR, another year with some of these young defensemen coming up. I don't love their goaltending. They pick up Calvin Pickard off waivers at a bit of a desperation move here as they try and sort things out in goal, and that's the thing in Philadelphia, right? You always need a goaltender. So if they can stay healthy, I think they're strong enough to get in. And I just really like Florida, John. I look at that team on paper. They're so deep. They're so strong. They find a way to really just do a great job. I think the Panthers are going to get in this year in the playoffs.
Could you see Columbus getting a king's ransom out of Philadelphia for Bobrovsky? Wouldn't that be hilarious, seeing as they got Bobrovsky from Philly?
I had that thought. I had that exact thought. It was like, shit, yeah, Philly could really use a goalie, and yeah, that's a guy who's available. But I think they do it. I just don't see Columbus doing it right now. But
that's what I mean, right?
Okay, what do you think? Hypothetically, what would it take to get Bobrovsky right now from Columbus? What would you need? What would you need?
Oh man, it's well, first of all, as the team bring him back, I'd need assurances that he's going to resign. In order before I give you, because he's an unrestricted free agent, right? Or he's going to be.
So assume he's going to resign. You're going to keep.
He's going to resign. It's definitely 2 firsts and a prospect. I think. I mean, he's a Vezina winning goaltender.
Yeah,
he really is. I think he's worth a lot. And if he's going to resign with you long term, then they're going to ask for a lot, and it's going to start with a couple first round picks and a guy who's ready to play today.
Yeah, and if hypothetically staying with Philadelphia, I think that prospect would be somewhere along the lines of Connor Hart, the Team Canada goaltender who's in the Philadelphia system, who, by all accounts, is the young up-and-coming guy out there in Philadelphia. Johnny,
so my wild
who do you got?
I got New Jersey and I've got Florida. I think Florida is good enough to make the wild card. I think they got heartbreak last year, just missing out on it, but. I think that Florida's going to come in this year. They're going to play better, they're going to continue to play well, I should say. Hopefully they can get a full year out of Roberto Luongo. Last year he got hurt, and that really hurt them, having to rely on Jimmy Jam. But, James Reimer's good in a pinch. He's just not good to have 20, 30 games in a row when you're missing your number one guy. Jersey, I mean, what can you say about that team, right? Nico Hischier, Taylor Hall, Corey Schneider, Eddie Lack, I believe, is still in the organization. I mean, this team is stacked. I can't begin to speak on their defense because I don't know too much about the Devils, but I do know they're good enough to make the playoffs this year and actually make a pretty serious push here.
Yeah, I just disagree. I just don't really like New Jersey. I think they play a tough game, but up front, besides Taylor Hall, like Nico Hischier's not a number one center. He's not. I don't think he's elite by any means yet. Their back end, you mentioned it, right? Like, you can't talk about it, I can't talk about it. Who's the fuck plays defense for the New Jersey Devils? Nobody goddamn knows. Because, and I don't know, as much as I like Corey Schneider, and I'm sure they're going to be in it because they're going to be a pain in the ass, I think this was a team that rallied around Brian Boyle last year and found a way to fight and really... Brian Boyle, yeah, he was a New Jersey Devil last year. Yeah, good. I'm glad I got that off the top of my head. I really do think that this was a team that rode some momentum. I don't have them getting in, but curiously, John, you don't have Columbus in at all this year. You don't think Columbus is a playoff team?
No, I honestly don't. That's because I believe they're going to get rid of both Panarin and Bobrovsky.
Oh, okay.
I think that's where it's going to. Yeah, I think that's where it's going to land. Just because these guys don't want to stay, right? And Jarmo Kekalainen has never been a dude who's going to be put behind the 8 ball and not be able to get out in front of it. This guy's been one of the better general managers. I believe he's a general manager, right?
Yep.
In the NHL, and I mean, he's held the job for quite some time. So I think he's going to find a way to get out in front of this one and trade these guys off. He's not afraid. They've lost there before. They've rebuilt. They've been a competitive team. He's done it. He can do it again. So I don't think he's afraid to tear this thing down and get some really good return for those two.
Yeah, I guess so. If that's what your thought process, then I can't blame you for thinking they're not going to make the playoffs. You have different thought processes on Columbus this year, which is fine. Team I did want to talk about here quickly, though, Johnny, is Buffalo. Me and you both have them not making the playoffs, but a team I think that might have improved the most in the offseason in the Eastern Conference, besides the Toronto Maple Leafs, a team that added potentially a number one defenseman. They losing Ryan O'Reilly hurts, but I think they got some decent returns for that. And they're a young, up-and-coming team that's going to be fast. I think Casey Middlestat might be up for the Vezina or the Rookie of the Year. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I think this could be the year for Jack Eichel, and him and Jeff Skinner scare the crap out of me as a top line. I think those two are going to put up some points, but you don't think they're going to make the playoffs? Do you think they're going to scare some teams? Do you think they're even going to be close, or is this just a year too soon for the Buffalo Sabres?
I think that they are maybe a year, maybe 2 years away from being truly competitive in the NHL. They're getting better, and they're doing it right. They're building the team the proper way. They're getting defense, some decent goaltending, great forward core.
Yeah.
Jack Eichel's got to earn that $10 million,
Gotta earn
though,
it,
man.
but-
He's got to earn it. I think they're going to push some teams. They're not going to be that joke of the NHL anymore because they're too good now to be a joke. But they're still not good enough to make the playoffs. So sorry, Buffalo fans, but you're a couple years behind the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll get back to that 4-0-1 rivalry in a few years. But right now, just continue to rebuild.
Yeah, for me, Buffalo, there's the two R's that I really want to keep an eye on this year: Rasmus Ristolainen and Reinhart. These two guys. Sam Reinhart last year, basically he was a point per game player the last 40 games, and he was lights out for the Sabres whilst he was on the wing. And then Rasmus Ristolainen, I fucking hate this guy. This guy's such a pain in the ass. You watch him play hockey, and he's mean, he's dirty, he's gritty, he's big, and he's strong. And I think he has all the makings of a number one defenseman in the NHL. And I think he's going to be really good for the growth and development of a guy like Rasmus Dahlin, who's going to be able to be sheltered a little bit and not put into necessarily the shut down the big minutes because they got a guy like Ristolainen that they're comfortable giving those minutes to. But once again, in Buffalo, the goaltending is always an issue. I like what they did. They brought in a couple guys. They obviously got rid of Robin Lehner. They had enough of the Lehner experiment, but we'll see what happens in Buffalo. I don't have New Jersey making it this year. But, yeah, anything else you want to mention from the Eastern Conference here, Johnny?
No, I think we should just jump right on into who we think are going to dominate this year and get these awards
All
that
right.
we want to talk about.
Give us the recap. Do you have the recap in front of you of who won
You know
last
what?
year?
I think I just might.
Oh, you're
actually.
fucking prepared. I love it.
I do have it. Okay, so Ted Lindsay last year was, of course, Connor McDavid. We're not going to do all these, so actually, let me just read the ones we're going to do. We got the Norris Trophy. We'll start off with that. That's at the top of the list. The Norris Trophy was Victor Hedman last year. Who you got this year, Joey?
I think it's going to be the Erik Karlsson show. I don't really... in my head, I can argue it, but I just think he's going to have such a good year out west, and I think all the eyes are on him. And Erik Karlsson just draws attention, and he's on the best team he's ever played on. He's on an offensive-minded team. He's going to get so many points. And I know you're going to tell me Brett Burns is going to take away some Norris votes from him, but I think this is the year for that Erik Karlsson gets back and gets his third Norris Trophy, I believe.
Actually, what I was going to say is I'm so sick of defensemen being given the Best Defenseman of the Year award for scoring goals. That's an offensive thing. It should be about being the best defensive player, and not that Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns aren't good defensive players, but they're way better offensive players than they are defensive players. I got PK Subban taking this one down. And that's just. And let me explain. It is literally a placeholder. He is a placeholder because I want to see somebody step up and be that defenseman that I'm looking to win this award. I really had nobody to put in there because I didn't want to put a super high-powered offensive dude in there.
That's what PK is.
He is more defensive on that team. He has a better defensive metric than Erik Karlsson does. Oh. And I'm just so sick of seeing offensive numbers skew a defensive total. They need to bring another award in here, Joey. They have to bring in the Best Offensive Defenseman award. They really do. Offensive defensemen have been a thing in the NHL for many, 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 many years. And why isn't there an award celebrating them? I don't know. I don't know who's going to win the Norris. I should have left it blank. I really should have, but I just threw a name in there. It's because I don't know. Like I said, I'm so sick of seeing offense win the defense award.
I just don't get it, John, because PK Subban, his Norris was for being the best offensive defenseman that year. And that's what PK Subban is. He's an
Yeah,
offensive-minded defenseman. And if he wins the Norris, it's because he's going to score 20 goals and have 40 assists and be right up there in the scoring leaders for defensemen this year. Um, I think there's a lot better choices than PK Subban. I think you copped out on that one, pal. Give
I
me your
definitely copped out on it. I will
give me
take the
Victor
cop out.
Hedman, because
I'll definitely
if
take
you
the cop
wanted
out
to
on
say
that.
a guy who's a better defender, go Victor Hedman, who's so good defensively and just does it on both sides. Give it to a guy there's so many options. PK, I don't know, Johnny. Like Mark Giordano's
That
going to
was a
be up
cop
there.
out on my end.
I
I'll
think
take that, but I mean, I really didn't want to put anybody up there.
I think a guy like Cam Fowler could step up this year for Anaheim. I think to me, I don't even want to say it, but I think a guy like Morgan Riley could take a jump this year because I know you hate it, but we do play the points game, and he's going to be on a top three power. He's going to be the quarterback of a top three power play in the NHL. It's going to get you some points. You're going to find a
Yeah,
way
he's definitely getting an uptick.
to rack up some points, and he was a 50-point guy last year. So you never know. All right, where do you want to go next?
What do we have on our list? Sorry, I need to check my list
Okay.
here. Yeah. So next up is the Hart Trophy. We have. Or do you want to end
Yeah,
with the Hart?
let's end with Hart. Let's go Vesna.
Vesna Trophy winner, obviously last year was Pekka Rinne from the Nashville Predators, and this year, I mean, this is an award where it really is the same five guys every year, right?
Yeah.
Because like they're the top five goaltenders in the league. But do you maybe, if he has a great year, do you see Freddie Anderson getting into this conversation this year?
Obviously, I think Freddie can be in the conversation. I think sometimes when you're on a team as stacked as Freddie Anderson is, you're not going to get the consideration because I think Martin Jones is going to be in the conversation this year too, with that defense core in front of him. But in saying that, Pekka Rinne won it last year, and he had the best defense core in the NHL in front of him, right? And Martin Jones, I think, has the best defensive core in front of him this year. I don't think he's going to win it. My pick for the Vezina this year might surprise you. I'm going to go Marc-Andre Fleury, Vegas Golden
Ooh.
Knights. I think he's a media darling. Everybody loves Marc-Andre Fleury. Vegas is going to be very, very good again this year. And I think that a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury is going to put up some points and some numbers, and he's going to have a good year. And I think he's going to be my Vezina Trophy winner, Mr. Lodge. Who do you got?
I got Connor Hellebuck.
Mm.
I think that Mr. Hellebuck, he had an outstanding year last year, and he kind of got robbed a little because Rene had that much better of a year. But yeah, I think that chip on the shoulder is just a little bit bigger for Connor Hellebuck, and that team is just so dynamic in Winnipeg. You've got Scheifele, you've got Line, you've got Wheeler, you've got Bufflin. Oh my God, the team is just, and that's just
Myers,
naming the big
Trouba,
names. Yeah, I'm just naming the big names, right? Like, yeah, you can
Morrissey.
keep going. And it's just the team is so deep. I gotta see this guy. He's so competitive and he never gives. He reminds me a lot of Freddie Anderson the way that he just never gives up, right? Never gives up on a play, and that's what makes these goaltenders elite. So yeah, I got Hellebuck taking the Vezina this year, well deserved. But in order for him to do that, and not that the numbers are skewed by the playoffs, but I think that they are in a way. I think that Winnipeg has to make at least the Western Conference Final in order for him to do this.
Yeah, well, you never know, right? But it's certainly not a bad pick. He's the favorite going into the year, is Carter Hellbuck, and I think even if
Oh,
we
he
said,
was? I didn't know he was a
yeah,
favorite.
he's the odds-on favorite, so it's all right, Johnny. Bet with the crowds,
Picking the favorites.
bets with the masses. That is fine. Let's move on. Let's move on to forward awards, Mr. Lodge. Let's start with the Rocket Richard, the NHL's highest scoring. Who's going to get the most goals this year? Obviously, it's been a bit of a back and forth. I believe McDavid won it last year, the Rocket last year, but I could
I
be.
think so, yeah.
I could
It
be.
doesn't have it on my list
Oh,
because it's not an actual like handed out award. It's
oh,
one
that's
that
right.
you win by being the best performing forward.
Well, let's look it up. Rocket Richard winner. Just so for clarity's sake. Did Ovechkin win last year? No. It's funny. You type in Rocket Richard winners, it's just a picture of Alex Ovechkin now. The guy's such a monster. Alex Ovechkin did win it last year. Okay. Ovi led the league in scoring. It was the league leader in scoring last year. Actually, it's been the Ovechkin show since 2012. Can't believe we almost gave it to McDavid. Since 2012-13, Ovechkin has won it every year except 16-17 when Crosby decided he was going to score goals and tucked like 45 or something. So Ovi comes away with it last year. Obviously, Patrick Laine is going to be in the mix. Kucherov's going to be right there. Maybe even Stamkos. If you want to look to Toronto, a guy like Austin Matthews, maybe even John Tavares with Mitch Marner feeding him the puck. Lots of options here, John. Obviously, Connor McDavid's going to be right up there in this mix. Can Alex Ovechkin hold on, or is this the year he finally gets passed?
Alex Ovechkin's such a prolific goal scorer. It's crazy. You brought up Toronto, and to me personally, I don't know if you can bring Toronto up in this just because they're so spread apart, right? I don't think that there's just that one option that's going to overload and put the puck in the net. So I think that you're going to have a bunch of 30-goal scorers again, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but none of them are going to win the Rocket. I got to hand this one to Ovi. I can't see him losing this trophy again. I will eat my humble pie if someone like Laine does it. I think that maybe he is probably the only guy who could possibly outscore Ovechkin, but he's still a couple of years behind doing that, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm going to give this one to Ovi, man. This guy going to go down, hands down, is probably the greatest scorer not named Gretzky to strap on a pair of skates.
Yeah, he's pretty good, but this is the year for Patrick Laine. You just mentioned when talking about Connor Hellebuyck and how he's going to win the Vezina, how deep that team is up front and all their weapons. Patrick Laine is at the top of that list. Their power play runs through him. He's such a monster. This is the year. He's trying to get paid. Him and Matthews, same boat this year. They're looking their last year of their 3-year entry-level deals. He's going to be an RFA next year. He's looking for that cash money, baby, and the best way to do it is go out and win a Rocket Richard, put it up on the mantle, and get yourself $9.5, $10 million. Patrick Laine, and maybe learn how to grow a better mustache. Couple more, John, before we get out of here. I do quickly want to ask you, who's going to be the Jack Adams? Last year it was Gerard Gallant. You always hear, it's always these Cinderella stories. It's not so much the best coach in the league, it's the team that surprises the most people. If you had to pick who you think's going to be your Cinderella darling coach this year, who are you taking?
Peter DeBoer still coaching the San Jose Sharks?
Absolutely is.
Yeah, it's him.
Yeah, you think so? You think he's just going to run away with it?
Yeah,
it's hard to argue that. I got Bobby Bugner down in Florida. We both have Florida making the playoffs this year. A team that didn't make it last year. It seems to be kind of the way they go with the voting. Like, I don't even think he's close to the best coach in the NHL. I wouldn't pick him in the top 15, but I just think that's the way voting seems to go in these awards. All right, 2 more before we get to the Hart Trophy and end it all off. I do want to quickly go to the Calder, John. Matt Barzal wins it last year, a New York Islander. Obviously, he benefited greatly from playing with a guy like John Tavares and that high-tempo New York Islanders offense. What do you think is going to happen this year? Obviously, guys like Rasmus Dahlin is at the top of the list. You have Elias Peterson in Vancouver. What are you thinking? Who are you thinking? Tell me why.
Here's the cop-out of the century. It's Rasmus Dahlin that's going to win this thing, man. This guy's an unbelievable defenseman. He is, so long as he lives up to his pedigree and what we've seen in international play, what we've seen so far in the preseason, this guy is, not that he's going to run away with it because you never know who's going to come out of the woodwork.
Sorry, buddy.
Clayton Keller. That's okay. You never know who's going to come out of the woodworks like Clayton Keller did last year, right? So it's going to be interesting. But I think that, man, he's just such a good defenseman that. Hot take. Here's my Norris Trophy winner, Rasmus Dahlin.
No way. But I kind of like it. I'm going to go off the board. Maybe not a guy that you were thinking, but a guy who's a familiar name just because of how well he did last year in the playoffs. Anthony Ciccarelli, Tampa Bay Lightning. This guy made his mark last year. A couple really good, gritty goals in the playoffs against Boston. Found a way to get Tampa Bay into the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they're just so good. And a forward that's going to be able to go in and put up numbers and slide in with this elite offensive group in Tampa Bay, I think these numbers are just going to be too much to pass up. But you never know. There's going to be some kid that comes out of nowhere and surprises us. There could be a defenseman that we just haven't seen. Obviously, Elias Peterson, I think, is going to be pretty good in Vancouver. But I think they're going to get their teeth kicked in every night. So I don't think he's going to be given much consideration, because I think a big thing with this award too, John, is your team has to be half decent. Like the Islanders weren't great last year, but they made a push for the playoffs, and Barzal got it. I don't think a team like Vancouver that's going to finish bottom 5, or a team like Ottawa who's going to finish bottom 5 in the league this year, despite having some young players, I just don't think they're going to put up the points and put up the stats to be considered for the Calder.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Is that all we have for the awards?
One more. I wanted to do the Art Ross before we get into the Hart here, John. Last year's winner, obviously Connor McDavid. The guy just puts up points. He's a monster on a terrible team. He's just so good. And I feel like picking against him is going to be hard. So I'm taking Connor McDavid. He's going to win the Art Ross for the third straight year, or the second straight year, and just be a complete monster again, despite not making the playoffs in Edmonton. Can you argue with me?
So you took the favorite. Does that mean I can take the field?
Sure, take the field.
I'll take the field in this one, because I really, like you said, you can't really bet against Connor McDavid, but you're giving me everybody else in the NHL. So I'll take that. I'll take the field against Connor McDavid. I think it's a fair bet, because this guy's just probably going to be – he is one of the greatest on skates right now, and will be the greatest on skates by the time he's done playing. So
absolute monster. All right, John. Hart Trophy.
Okay.
Who – the nominees last year, obviously Taylor Hall won it. Who was up with him?
I don't think I have who's up with him. I just have the winners
Nate
here.
McKinnon was up with him, as well as what's his face? I think it was Bobrovsky was the other Hart Trophy candidate. It was Bobrovsky. So last year, obviously 3 guys that McKinnon had a great year, Hall had a great year, both led their teams to the playoffs. That's kind of how this award's going. Do you have a prediction this year? Who do you think is going to be the 2018-19 Hart Trophy winner for the NHL season?
I mean, this one is just it's such an interesting award, but I'm gonna take your lead. I'm gonna give it to the guy who won it last year. I'm gonna take Connor McDavid in this one, because I don't see how you bet against him. There's always going to be people who are going to step up and make an argument. Hall, my bad.
Hall won the Hart last year.
Oh, I had it as. Oh no, that's right. That was who I had winning it. My apologies. I'm reading it on my list.
Oh yeah, okay. You have McDavid winning. Yeah.
I have McDavid winning.
That makes sense, because you have McDavid making the playoffs too in Edmonton, right?
Yeah. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah, I got Connor McDavid winning the Hart this year. I need to realize what list I'm reading next time. Yeah, I don't know. The guy's just the best player in the league, and I think he's going to elevate his team into the playoffs this year. I think that they need to play better. They will play better. And Connor's Connor, man. He's the greatest, and if they can just get their heads out their asses and get themselves going forward and heading north, man, this team's going to be hard to beat.
My pick is Claude Giroux, Philadelphia Flyers. I think he had such a monster year last year, a bit overlooked. I think him and JVR playing together, he's going to be able to put some points up. He's going to have another great year, I think. I really like Philadelphia, I think. And the thing that I like most about this pick, John, is I think Philadelphia is going to need to score goals. Like, they're going to be behind in games. They're going to be gunning offensively. Their goaltending is just not good enough. So Claude Giroux is going to need to put up points. He's going to have every opportunity, and I think this is the year that Philly gets back into the playoffs, and then they find a way, and Claude Giroux finds a way to win the MVP, just because I wanted to go off the board a little bit, and I like Claude Giroux.
That's a good pick, though, because he had a rough start last year. I think they tried playing him center, and they moved him back to the wing, and he played much better when he was back on the wing. So they keep him out there. That's a good pick. He could have a very surprising year.
Couturier, JVR, Giroux could be a bit of a line this year for the
Yeah,
Philadelphia
just a
Flyers.
bit,
And
right?
you can see Gritty in full action with the Flyers this year. All right, John. Maple Leafs Canadiens, 7 o'clock
I
tonight.
I
I'm
wanted to
not
bring
going
something
out of
up
here.
before we get into
Yeah.
that. I have to bring this up, and I know this might be a topic more for our radio show, but I've got to bring this up,
You want to talk
Joey.
about Seattle?
I want to talk
Yeah.
about Tom Wilson.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about Tommy Wilson.
I want to talk about Tom Wilson. I want to
Actually,
talk
can we
about
save that for the radio show? Because we're going to find out his suspension at noon today. So
Okay,
let's
you know
save
what?
it
Yeah,
for
we'll save it.
tomorrow
We'll
on the
save it.
Sports Lodge on rightradio.ca. Tune in then. That'll be Thursday, October the 4th. You can tune
You're gonna want to hear what I have to say
John
about that
has some
hit. I'm
things
telling
to
you.
say, and you know what? It's going to be good because I'm going to argue them. So the season starts tonight, Johnny. This has gone pretty long here. I want to get out of here. Is there anything else you'd like to add to our season preview edition of the Sports? Oh, do you have any bold predictions? Any hot takes for the year that you'd like to share with the people?
Buffalo doesn't make the playoffs? No,
No, that's not
I
a
don't
hot
really
take.
have a hot take at
All
this
right.
point right now. I mean, I wish I did have a hot take to give you. I guess my hot take is Columbus is out. Columbus doesn't make the playoffs,
Yeah,
right?
it's a bit of a
pretty
hot take. Yeah,
right?
I'll take that away from what I've heard from you. You don't think any defensemen are good in the NHL. You think PK Subban's the shit. You're not convinced at all about Columbus, which I can agree with. You don't think any Canadian teams out west besides the Winnipeg Jets are going to get in, which makes it
I got Edmonton in.
Besides Edmonton. It's weird that you have Edmonton. I have Calgary. I think my bold prediction, John, is heads are going to roll in Edmonton. I think Todd McClellan's out after this year. I think it's going to be a fucking burn down because it's going to be a disappointing year for the Edmonton Oilers. Same thing in Los Angeles. I think this could be the year that the dynasty ends, John. I have them missing the playoffs this year. And Kopitar and Doughty are locked up long term. So is Quick. I just don't know if they have the young pieces around them in LA. It's going to be a great year. I'm so looking forward to it. Obviously, here in Toronto, there's so many storylines. Ottawa's going to be such a big key to watch this year. I do believe Mark Stone and Matt Duchene will be traded by the trade deadline.
Oh, yeah.
I think that there's going to be lots of player movement, especially what's going to happen. Before we get out of here, Willie Nylander, is he a Maple Leaf before American Thanksgiving, yes or no?
Yeah, I think he is. I think that the longer this goes out, the more money he starts to lose, the more his eyes start to open up, and then his dad's voice kind of maybe will back off out of his ear a little bit. I really think this has a lot to do with his dad telling him not to get screwed by the organization the way he got screwed by his, and I don't know. I want Willie Nylander on this team so fucking bad, Joey. He needs to be on this squad. And I just hear this crazy thing like he has the choice to just not show up or go play over in Europe. And I was like, no, don't go play in Europe, William. I don't need you going and hurting yourself and like that. I want this guy on the team. What's crazy though is if this thing drags on past December, Joey, he can't play. He's not allowed in the rules of the CBA. So the Leafs have to get this one done. It'd be funny though if they got this one done before the start of puck drop tonight, eh? If they were just like doing some sort of weird thing where they're working their not that he's going to play tonight, obviously that's not happening, but like just drop it just before game time.
No, well, here's my dream, John. Here's my dream and then we'll get out of here on this. Is that William Nylander just skates out in warm-ups, hair flowing, beard like a Viking god, just number 29 flashing in the wind, no bucket, like nothing, like they didn't miss a beat. Like he signs his contract at like 6:30, steps on the ice. What, does he need to practice to know where Austin Matthews is going to be? No, I don't think so. I think he's a pretty goddamn good hockey player himself. I think that he could step out, and I just imagine like the ACC tonight is going to be so loud.
Scotiabank Arena.
Whatever. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be so loud. And can you imagine if they and number 29, William Nylander.
The roof would fly off that place.
Blow off. And he's looking good with the flow and the beard. You've seen the Reebok ads. It's going to be fun. All right. That's our season preview edition of the Sports Lodge podcast. Thank you so much for listening in. We will be back later in the week. We apologize for a bit of the delay. Technical issues have officially affected the Sports Lodge pod. Johnny, this has been a lot of fun. Do you have anything else you want to say to the peeps?
You know what? Just check out the social media, like, follow, subscribe. I'm gonna have some daily fantasy stuff coming up on the
Oh,
Sports
for
Lodge
sure.
Twitter and maybe on the Sports Lodge Facebook page. So check out there today before game time tonight if you want to get my sweet picks for daily fantasy. And I've been on a burner this last week,
He's
so you
been
want my
he's
picks.
been killing it, folks. You want to make that money? Listen to John Lodge and the Sports Lodge. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will be back soon. Love you. Bye.
Peace.